Chapter 3. The busiest nights for the Big Sky Medical Center in Bozeman are always on Friday. Aside from a few older folks with heart emergencies and diabetic seizures, the new arrivals are mostly ranchers and miners who get into fist and knife fights in the honky-tonk bars. There isn't much else to do in Meridian County. Dr. Richard Smith is the chief resident physician at Big Sky Medical, a safe community he had chosen to live in and practice medicine. He'd seen enough death during his tour of duty in Afghanistan. The only thing out of the ordinary this evening was a delightful little girl wandering the hallways. Her parents were being treated in room 18 on the west corridor, and it was time to check in on them. A nurse was in the room taking her vitals when he entered. "So, how are you two doing?" he asked both parents. The wife spoke. "I'm just a little dizzy, Doctor." "And I have a big headache," the husband said. Dr. Smith smiled. "All that is to be expected. Both of you suffered a concussion and minor internal bleeding from the impact. Thankfully, the CT scan shows no serious damage and no TBI." "What is TBI?" the husband asked. "Traumatic brain injury. I was in the medical corps in Afghanistan. We saw a lot of brain damage from exploding IEDs. The damage is caused by a rapid acceleration or deceleration from an explosion, car crash, or other hard impact. The brain slaps the inside of the skull, causing damage to the neurons. I can't be 100% certain that both of you haven't suffered some damage, but it appears that's not the case. Still, I want to keep both of you in the hospital for a couple of nights for observation." "What about our daughter?" the wife asked. "Amy is more than fine. Apparently she was sleeping or lying on the floorboards surrounded by blankets and pillows. Little kids are very resilient. They don't break as easily as we do," Dr. Smith explained. Meanwhile, Amy was exploring the east wing of the hospital and making friends with everyone she met. Both the staff and the patients were amused at a 5-year-old carrying a teddy bear and wearing an oversized leather coat that completely covered her hands and dragged on the floor. All you could see was her blonde hair and face poking out the top. The only person who wasn't amused was the head nurse. "Let me have that coat, little girl." "No." "Why not?" "It belongs to my guardian angel, and I'm not taking it off until he comes back," Amy said. "Do you mean the older white-haired man who brought you here?" "No, not him. The guardian angel who saved my mommy and daddy when we wrecked." The nurse shrugged her shoulders and walked off for the third time. Amy shrugged her shoulders to imitate the pesky nurse and shuffled to the front lobby. She stood looking outside, wishing her guardian angel would soon return. Dr. Smith smiled when he left his two patients, knowing they would be okay. Traffic accidents seldom happened to the locals because they knew how to drive on Montana's treacherous winter roads. Except for the trunks, of course. He just received word that 2 of them were found by a motorist, both dead but not from drinking. According to the paramedics on the scene, they died from multiple gunshot wounds. The county medical examiner and Smith were summoned to the emergency room to await the arrival of the 2 bodies. Even though they were stiff as concrete, someone had to declare them dead and certify the cause of death. Smith knew it was up to police investigators to determine who shot them, but most likely they'd simply write a report and forget about wasting police resources investigating who shot a couple of drunken losers. His thoughts were interrupted by a vibrating phone in his pocket. He answered immediately. "Yes, Dr. Smith speaking." "Doc, this is Homicide Detective Rogers with the Gallatin County Police. The bodies of the 2 homicide victims arrived yet?" "No, but I expect they'll be here any minute." "So will 2 more bodies, Doc. At the scene of a crashed highway patrol helicopter. Both officers are dead. Judging by a large bullet hole in the windshield, it appears they were shot out of the sky." "I'm very sorry to hear that, Detective Rogers, but we'll process the paperwork on them so you can file your usual report," the doctor replied sarcastically. "Paperwork, hell, we've launched a major homicide investigation, Doc. Looks like we have a little war going on out here." Detective Rogers abruptly ended the phone call, and Dr. Smith's expression turned grim. He peered out the glass doors of the emergency room, wondering whatever happened to the peaceful community he thought he'd moved to. "What did the detective say?" the medical examiner asked. "He said to call your wife and tell her you'll be working late tonight. It appears the devil himself is strolling through Montana." Chapter 4. It turned brutally cold when the sun descended behind the Rocky Mountains. The thermometer on the driver's outside mirror showed 20 degrees, and the temperature was still dropping. The Mustang shuddered from cold gusts of wind as he continued north. He touched the weather icon on his smartphone and saw that a deadly blizzard was on the way. He needed shelter to ride out the storm, but couldn't exactly check into a motel. Couldn't stay on the road either because they would soon have a roadblock set up. The only choice he had was to ditch the bullet-riddled Mustang and somehow survive a blizzard with nothing but a t-shirt. The first order of business was to toss a Xanax in his mouth to calm him down. He didn't believe in drugs, but he believed less in the government's authority to tell him what to put in his body. The next thing was to make a phone call to another friend, a female. "Yes," she answered. "It's me," he replied. "It's me too." She knew better than to use names even on her encrypted phone. "Is there a warm place to hide out near me?" He gave her his GPS location. "Let me check. It'll take just a few seconds." "Okay, got it. You need to get on a dirt road 2 miles ahead on your right. Follow the dirt road a couple of miles and it'll lead to an old ghost town. Some of the buildings should still be standing." "That'll work if they're still standing. What other options do I have, just in case they aren't?" "Okay, how about a cave? The average 49 to 50 degrees year-round where you are." "Where is one?" he asked. "It's on a bike path approximately 1 mile northeast of the ghost town, down the same dirt road. I can't guarantee it hasn't collapsed. The information was posted on the web 10 years ago by some splunkers." "I'll have to chance it. But if you don't hear from me by morning, you'll know where to find a corpse circle." "You'll survive, my love. I haven't found anything yet you couldn't do, or wouldn't." She laughed. "Thanks for the ego boost, but I gotta go." She had no idea how desperate the situation was, and he didn't have time to explain. Whatever the consequences, he had to get off the highway. The ghost town or the cave was his only option. He was halfway there when he saw the roadblock. They'd chosen their spot well, just below a rise and on a stretch with deep ditches on both sides. 4 patrol cars waited for him. 2 parked at right angles to the highway with their front ends meeting at the center of the highway. The engine mast was expected to prevent anyone from ramming through. The other 2 patrol cars were stationed on each side of the roadblock to give chase if needed. Everybody had shotguns. There are 3 ways to defeat a roadblock. Turn off the highway and be chased across the fields. Somehow go through the roadblock and hope the police are lousy shots. Or do a bootlegger's turn and go back the way you came. He considered his 3 options. Number 1 was out because the ditches prevented him from leaving the highway. Number 2 was out because the lightly armored Mustang wasn't designed to stop shotgun slugs. Number 3 was out because he didn't have enough fuel left to engage in a lengthy chase. The troopers now leveled their shotguns at the Mustang as he closed the distance. All 4 were standing behind their patrol cars when the Mustang unexpectedly stopped a quarter mile away. The driver knew their shotguns were not effective at long ranges, so he didn't get any closer. Instead, he waited for the troopers to make one of 2 moves. Either sit there all night or come to him. The first trooper tossed his shotgun in the seat of his patrol car and began driving toward the Mustang. The others followed suit in a rolling roadblock, moving slowly to get as close as possible before they raced in for the kill. They didn't get the chance. He shifted into reverse and slammed the gas pedal to the floor, spinning his tires in a dense cloud of smoke while rapidly accelerating backwards. Immediately, he jerked the steering wheel hard to spin around until the car was headed south at full throttle. He barked the tires with every gear change as he sped 160 miles an hour. The troopers turned on their sirens for the chase. The driver knew it would have been simpler to have done a bootlegger's turn the instant he saw the roadblock. but he had to get close enough for them to verify he was their man, not a drunk who turned around. The idea was to get all 4 patrol cars after him. He had put almost a mile distance between them, which was well past the ditches where they'd placed their roadblock. He slowed to 80 miles an hour to turn off the highway and churning clods of frozen dirt in the process. Earlier, he noticed a pond on that side of the road, almost unseen behind clumps of aspen trees. His timing was critical. He had to allow them close enough to see the Mustang turn off the road, but not so close they could see him roll out the door before the Mustang went into the pond. He slowed his car to 25 miles an hour, and at the last second, grabbed a black nylon bag from the floorboard and jumped out. He tucked his head in and rolled several yards before getting to his feet and running. The Mustang sank in the shallow pond, with only the rear end showing. Since the troopers couldn't know if he drowned in the car or not, at least 2 of them would have to stay until a wrecker arrived. The other troopers would probably drive in ever-widening circles to see if he'd escaped on foot. The driver ran northeast, using the aspens for cover, jumping the steep ditch where the patrol cars had set up their roadblock. He crossed the highway and continued running at a fast pace, then slowed to a jog for another mile until he found the dirt road. He had 2 more miles to cover before reaching the ghost town and was already shaking from the Arctic wind. Then the blizzard hit. Chapter 5. Whoever said it can be too cold to snow has never been to Montana. Flakes of snow were as big as quarters and blew horizontally in a blind white curtain so thick he couldn't see his hands. He didn't know what the actual temperature was, but wind chill was the problem. He would be unconscious from exposure in 10 minutes if he didn't find shelter. The ghost town was 2 miles away. He used to be able to run a mile in 5 minutes, but that was under ideal conditions. He could barely see the road through the snow and wasn't sure if he was on it. Over the years, it had leveled out with the surrounding field and sprouted grass. Soon he was tripping over shrubbery. In order to preserve the battery, he didn't use his smartphone flashlight. Instead, he retrieved a small flashlight from the black nylon bag, and since the beam didn't penetrate the thick snowfall, he had to hold the flashlight a foot off the ground to see the road. The driver knew he would die soon, but he kept going. Sometimes you get lucky. Like when he drifted off the road and stumbled over a pile of discarded trash. A close examination revealed a brown canvas tarp someone had thrown away. He pulled it loose from the rubble and quickly measured its width and length. Had a couple of holes in it, but it didn't matter. He wrapped the tarp around his head and body to knock the wind off and reached into his pocket for his knife. He fashioned a hood and cut a strip for a belt to hold the tarp against his body. Then he dropped to his knees and began doing push-ups to generate heat inside the crude poncho that he'd made. It took 20 minutes of jogging to reach that ghost town due to the need to stop periodically to make sure he was still on the road. He found the town only after stepping on some rotten boards and feeling his way for the buildings like a blind man. After wandering around with his hands in front, he discovered there were no buildings still standing, only a couple of walls and a partially collapsed chimney. He was totally exhausted and sat down against one of the walls. Just 5 minutes of rest, and he'd head for the cave, he told himself, as he drifted off to sleep. The smartphone stirred him to semi-consciousnness, but he thought he was in bed and dismissed the call. It took a third call to fully rouse him. "Avon calling." It was the same female voice. "Is this a telemarketing call?" He was violently shivering. "No, this is a save your life call because you were there sleeping." "How do you know?" "Because I programmed your smartwatch to ring your phone and call me if your pulse rate dropped. Just think, all this time you thought smartwatches were only for geeks." "Power to the geeks." His voice was unsteady. "Get up and get going, Prince Charming, before you freeze to death." "Okay, but death isn't so bad." She ignored the remark. "Did you have any naughty dreams about me?" she asked. It never stopped. They better not. Now get going. She asked the naughty joke to gauge his condition and was relieved to see he still had a sense of humor. That meant he'd survive. The snow had thinned out barely enough for him to see the footpaths without the aid of his flashlight, so he began a fast walk to the cave entrance. He shone his flashlight inside before entering. No telling what strange creatures might be inside. The flashlight revealed that the cave had almost completely collapsed. The open area in front was about 8 by 12 feet, with a plate-sized opening at the rear above a rock pile. He shined his flashlight inside the small opening and saw hundreds of bats hanging from the ceiling. It reeked of bat guano, but at least there was no smell in the main room. That would be his home for the night. Although most caves maintain a livable temperature, he wasn't really inside a cave, only at the entrance, with a cold wind and snow blowing inside. He had noticed a few aspen saplings and clumps of sagebrush near the mouth of the cave and stepped outside to gather them. By wedging the saplings in the entrance and stuffing them with sagebrush, he managed to seal the opening. It was still deathly cold inside, but with the wind blocked, he could now build a fire with leftover twigs and sagebrush. After arranging the kindling into a small pile, he withdrew his pocket knife and removed a .40 caliber cartridge from the Glock's magazine. He used the knife to cut the mouth of the brass cartridge case just enough to slip the tip of the blade under the bullet and pry it out. Then he dumped the powder into the kindling. The next step required him to work in total darkness while shivering. He turned off the flashlight, removed the batteries, and then ripped out a piece of wire. He used the pocket knife to scrape the coating off the side of one battery near the positive pole. Then he cut the wire in half and stripped the insulation off each end. He held the end of one strip wire to the positive pole and another to the scraped side of the battery. When the ends glowed red hot, he pressed the wire into the gunpowder, igniting it instantly and setting the sagebrush aflame. He added more twigs and larger pieces of aspen as the fire grew and lit the partial cave. Now it was time to inventory his survival kit. He was warm enough to remove his homemade poncho and spread it on the floor. He dumped the contents of the nylon bag. Before him were the 2 stolen Beretta pistols, a stack of white cards, a rubber mask, 2 military MRE meals, and 2 cold sausage and egg biscuits he'd bought earlier that morning. He checked his pants pockets. They contained the IDs of the chopper crew, his smartphone, $4,800 cash, and his driver's license and credit card under someone else's name. It wasn't much, but it was all he needed. After sitting down on the tarp to unwrap a sausage and egg biscuit, he heard something pawing at the mouth of the cave. A sand-colored animal with red eyes was coming in. He withdrew his Glock and aimed it